G'day there guys, it's your Aussie Hubby Markee, back at it again with another episode of r/AmITheA. Now if you love this one like I love you, be sure to smash that like button and tell me what you think about it. Who is the a-hole in this situation? Anyway guys, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody good content. Posted by user Moody Fish Milo, titled, Am I the a-hole? Roommate wants me to move out January 2nd and wants his deposit that day. Hi. Very long time lurker, and in need of some advice, and I apologize for the long post. I, female 38, am the leaseholder of a 3-bedroom house. I rent out 2 of the rooms. I got a text this afternoon that roommate number 3, male 24, wants to move out January 1st, that the room is too small for him, and he wants to spend New Year's Eve in a larger space. My response was, cool. When I spoke in person, he wants to move out January 2nd and wants his deposit back the same week. I am in my last year of grad school. I said if he has to move out on the 1st or the 15th and will receive his deposit after I inspect the room. He says he needs the money now. I explained that he is moving out at the worst possible time and that it's almost impossible to find a suitable roommate January 1st. So I have to cover his part of the rent, my part of the rent, and tuition for my last semester. I asked him to work with me so I can have a paycheck so I don't leave myself broke. I'll give him back his deposit 2 weeks after he moves out. He said that I was making him feel bad for moving out, and to be honest, I'm worried about me. I don't have any other support, but student loans and a part-time job. I am in the middle of finals, and now I'm scrambling to find a roommate. Am I the a-hole by not letting him move out on the 2nd and giving him his deposit then and there? Not the a-hole. You owe him his deposit when the law says you owe him the deposit. Anything before that is a favor. I don't know what the law says there, but here it's usually the deposit is returned ASAP. He's given more than a month's notice, so why can't he have the deposit back? Because the security deposit is retained until it is confirmed no damage has occurred. Sometimes damage takes some time to manifest itself, thus the prescribed statutory period to refund a security deposit, and the time to return the deposit starts on the day after the lease ends. In this case, probably the 3rd, then runs for the statutory time. Not the a-hole. Do what you need to do first, because if you give him his deposit and his room is screwed, you lose yours. Everyone sucks here. He should know he can't demand his deposit back whenever he feels, and you shouldn't have spent his security deposit. Where does it say that she spent the deposit? In the comments she left, she stated she did not spend it, but is worried since now she has to cover his part of the rent. Yes, but even if she has to cover his part of the rent, the deposit cannot be used for that or any cost besides damage to the property. Nowhere it states that she has or will. She's worried about making ends meet, and from my understanding, has an issue with giving the money without proper inspection. I just don't understand how her having trouble making ends meet means that she wants to withhold the deposit. From my understanding, she would be inspecting the room on the 1st and 2nd, and then would hold on to the deposit until she was ready to pay it. Now I think she is perfectly fine to hold the deposit for as long as the law states that she can, but it shouldn't have anything to do with her financial situation once she's inspected the room. What do you guys reckon's going on here? And now for update on roommate wanting to move out January 2nd and received his deposit the day he moves out. I asked him last night what his date was since he never gave me a concrete one. He said December 31st and wanted me to Venmo him his deposit the minute he moves out. I said that's not going to happen. I will inspect the room after he leaves. I will send a certified check for the full deposit amount if the room is in good order in 30 days. He started flipping out, saying he wants his frickin' money the moment he moves out. He called me incompetent for not finding a roommate and that I'm punishing him for moving out. I'm a manipulative bear who wants people to feel sorry for me, that I made him feel guilty for moving out, and that he has a lawyer friend who will look at this situation. I responded with, I am not punishing him for moving out, but protecting myself, and from moving forward, I only feel comfortable talking to his lawyer. I said if he continues to speak with me like this, I will call the police. I was beginning to feel that unsafe with him. Now I am afraid he will do something mean to my cats. He acted like this to some of our mutual friends before, and some of them offered to be here when he moves out to be safe. I also told roommate number 2 about what happened, and he will lend a hand. And that's the last update we got. Jesus Christ, what did this post turn into? Not the a-hole, still. Even though you aren't looking for a judgment. Lol, I read the last post. Wow. Venmo? Screw this dude. Certified check so there is decent proof, not just some bullcrap on Venmo. If this guy gives you any more crap, I would definitely call the police. It is not normal to get your deposit the day you move out, or hell, even usually within a few days. Mine have usually taken a week at least, if not 2 weeks to do so. Keep your cats away from that dude, and if he does anything, call the cops. In my state, landlords and renters have 3 weeks to give your deposit back. Just Google, how long do landlords have to return security deposit, insert your state here, and that should answer your question. I don't really know how your month-to-month lease thing with him is contracted, or if it was verbal or what. I just found that part in your previous post. Posted by user JustLooking85, titled, "Am I the a-hole? My dad wants to marry a stranger, and we have told him we will have nothing to do with her." So my dad wants to marry someone my sister and I don't know, 10 months after our mum died. Our dad told us on Tuesday of his plans to marry someone in November. Our mum, his wife of 43 years, died in July 2019. Me, 34 female, and my sister, 36 female, had our dad tell us that he is going to marry someone he reconnected with in November. We live in Australia, and the person he is going to marry lives in England, where he and mum were from. My parents moved to Australia 42 years ago when they married at 19/20. My sister and I have only ever lived in Australia, with just brief time in England when we were young and in our early 20s. We don't know our aunties and uncles except for Facebook and the brief reunions when we were all in England. Our mum died in July last year after a 6-month battle with ovarian cancer. Our dad told us in January that he had reconnected with an old childhood friend of theirs and some feelings were developing. He initially told us that nothing would happen for 2 years because that was when he was planning on retiring. He told us that on his already planned trip to France and UK in July, that he would be spending some time with her to see if they clicked in person. He then told us 3 days after Mum's birthday, February 23rd, that he was going there for 2 weeks in March. Because of the Rona, he was there until the 6th of May. He's now back in Oz, but in isolation at a hotel. He called us on Tuesday, 2 days after Mother's Day, to tell us that they are getting married in the UK in November, and he will spend Christmas there. Then him and his wife will come to Australia in January until April, when he will retire, then go back to England. My sister and I are absolutely devastated, not only that he would marry a stranger, at least to us, but that he would also abandon us and our families so soon after our mum died. We have told him if he marries this stranger, that she will not be welcome in our lives or our children's lives. Are we the a-hole? I'm gonna come in here and say yes. Edit. Thank you all for your responses. I see that we are the a-holes here. Grieving the loss of a parent is different to that of a spouse, and we have no right to stand in his way. When he's out of isolation, we'll sit down and have a chat. How I feel about the situation hasn't changed, but how we move forward will. So we'll see some comments here. You're the a-hole. This is about you and your grief. He isn't abandoning you and your families, he is living his life. Nothing stops you from visiting. If he decided to move to the UK alone, would you think he was abandoning you? Probably not. When you're married to someone for over 40 years and you lose them, you want to find companionship. This person isn't someone he never knew. Why not video chat and get to know her? I kind of agree with you, but I don't see why you think they wouldn't feel abandoned if he up and moved alone. I feel more like they'd feel abandoned whether he moved to get married or to do a whiskey tour in Scotland by himself until he died of liver failure, which is also his right as people grieve in different ways. To me, it was kinda not the a-hole because OP wants to stay as similar as before to feel better, and Dad needs as much change as possible to feel better. Conflicting needs, but it can coexist with some acknowledgement that grief is different. Except OP seems to not care about Dad's needs, which is what makes it you're the a-hole. I agree, Everyone has different techniques when it comes to overcoming grief and sadness. I agree that grief is difficult on all parties, and I don't begrudge the father for finding new companionship or even considering moving back to his native England. But to marry only 10 months after your wife's death is just hasty and ill thought. Period. Full stop. Remarrying so soon is reactionary to his grief. It sounds like he's running away from his loneliness instead of running towards an expansive, fulfilling relationship. Of course, I could be wrong, but I doubt I am. His partner is probably a lovely person, but 10 months, with only 6 months of lead-up illness, is far too hasty. OP, likewise, has a ton of unresolved grief, as is normal. I advise them to seek a therapist. You can't control other people, and they will need help to work through what they perceived as their father's betrayal of their mother and their family. When a spouse gets really sick, you move from being spouses to a caretaker role. He has been grieving for a lot longer time than the 10 months. I would also say it is very typical for a spouse, particularly a male, who was happy in his marriage to move on and find someone to fill that role because they were so happy. Super extra gentle, you're the a-hole. I am so sorry about your mum. I totally understand you're still grieving her death, and it seems like her memory is being disrespected because your dad is getting married again so soon to someone you don't know. That being said, your dad is a grown man with grown children. It would be different if you and your sister were still small children. Your dad has no obligations at this point except to himself. I'm sure your mum's death was hard on him as well, and for whatever reason, this new lady has helped him through the process, and now he wants to marry her. This lady is a new chapter in your dad's life, and she is absolutely not replacing your mum. Nobody can replace your mum. Please at least try to allow him this happiness. The very best thing for you to do would be to swallow your pride, tell your dad you're happy for him, and you can't wait to meet his new wife. You may even end up liking her. Swallowing my pride will be done. Our feelings are valid, but our reaction and the impact that could have was not. We don't have to be happy about it, but we can be happy for him, which we are. It's hard to get everything out in a small space. Not the a-hole. Studies show that happily married people are most likely to remarry quickly. He's not at an age where an extended courtship is appropriate. I get that this feels like a betrayal to your mother, but it is not. When my father-in-law died, my mother-in-law met a neighbor and they fell for each other. They married. It has been the best thing for both of them, although the one daughter had a hard time warming up to it. On the other hand, when my dad died, my mother became a living tombstone for him. For 30 lonely years. You do not want this for your father. If you love your father, and it seems you do, be kind. He deserves a happy retirement, and I promise he misses your mum. Living tombstone. Ouch. Perfect term, but oh such a sad and painful and lonely existence that sounds like. Yeah, that's exactly what my grandmother turned into, and it's really not good to see happen in front of you, that's for sure. That's why this one hurts me to read this post, Jesus. I did have a response to this recorded that was very angry as a initial reaction to that, but I deleted that one because it's not respectful to the OP. I just think that they are the a-hole in this situation and need to respect the father's wishes and let him live his life. I feel like they're old enough to be minding their own families at this point, and he can live his life however he wants, because he's about to retire. What, are you going to hold him back in Australia for his whole life? It just seems like a huge disservice to the father, and like you're holding him back from happiness, and I don't think anyone wants that. Posted by user, Am I the a-hole? Throw me away, please. Titled, Am I the a-hole for not giving my nephew food while he's living with me? About a month and a half ago, my 21-year-old nephew lost his job due to the pandemic, and then was illegally evicted from his apartment. He wasn't on the lease and his friend kicked him out, so there's nothing that can be done. He was planning to move in with his girlfriend, who lives in another state, but that is not possible until the end of this month. He called me and asked if he could stay at my place for a month, because he literally had nowhere else to go. I agreed, but with one rule. He has to buy his own food and cannot eat any of ours. I have 3 kids to feed and I can't afford it. At first, everything was fine, but of course he eventually ran out of money. Our state's unemployment office is taking forever with his claim, and no one will hire him since he's moving out of state. There have been a few times where I let him have some of our leftovers, and I cooked for his birthday, but usually he has to find something on his own. I'm not gonna lie, there are quite a few days where he goes with little to no food. But like I said, I just can't afford to feed him. Yesterday, I went and bought Chinese food for me and my boyfriend, and some burgers for the kids. That night, I noticed that some of my food was missing, and I know it wasn't the kids, because they don't like it. I'm honestly fed up at this point. I've been letting him stay here, and I told him not to eat our food. I've talked to one of my friends about this, and she says that I'm being the a-hole by letting him go hungry. I don't agree, because I told him he would have to buy his own food, and I can't afford to another person to feed. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. You are literally forcing him to starve while ordering takeout. There are 50-cent pot pies, and yeah, he's in a crap situation, but you are absolutely in the wrong. Not to mention the kids didn't like it, and you had leftovers and still declined to feed the poor man. How can you be that heartless? I just can't afford to feed him and get takeout at the same time. I was like, wow, things must be really tough for her if she can barely afford to feed her kids. Then she gets takeout, and I was like, what? Let's see. A Chinese takeaway might cost £20, which would be enough for a big bag of rice, which would feed him for a month. So your statement, I just can't afford to feed him, turns out to be untrue. You're the a-hole. Totally agree. With £20, if you were being frugal and getting smart price stuff, you could stock up and get enough to live off for 2 weeks if you were careful. I've done it myself when I was young and a broke student. Could you give me some tips, please? I'd really appreciate it. Dry beans and rice are your best bets. You can get multiple pounds for just a few bucks, and they're pretty easy to make. Probably the cheapest way to keep yourself fed. Spend just a little more on chicken stock or canned or frozen veggies to really add flavor. Also, a slightly more expensive option, but one that better covers your nutritional needs: milk, potatoes, and oats. Those 3 things contain all the micronutrients you need and are pretty high carb as well. Markee pro tip, potatoes are pretty good too. You're the a-hole. If he has literally no money to buy food, feed him. It doesn't have to be fancy, but don't let someone you care for, you provide a roof for, go hungry. Maybe skip takeout and see if he can cook something. Home cooked for $6 is cheaper than takeout for $5. And there's also an edit in the post. Alright, big edit time. For those of you hoping this was a troll post, I'm sorry, but it is not. I wish it was. However, the aunt did not write this post. I'm actually the girlfriend in this situation. I originally wrote this hoping to get a few comments about what other people thought. Surprisingly, this blew up. The information in this post is true, however. I wrote this using things she's said and done, my boyfriend's experiences, and her motivations. I agree with what the majority of you have said. I could not watch a fellow human being, let alone my own family, go hungry when I could do something about it. To me, it is reprehensible. I have given him some support since he's been living with her, but there's only so much I can do. Luckily, I get unemployment, but most of that will be going into the first month's rent and fees for our new apartment. Plus, I have a credit card debt that I must pay off every month. I thank all of you for your input, and also the people that have reached out and offered help. It makes me happy that there are selfless people in this world willing to help a complete stranger. In these hard times, it is a light in the darkness. Please stop sending messages wishing his auntie or her family death and harm though. While I don't agree with her choices, no one deserves that. Thanks again. And here's a little saucy story for you guys now. Am I the a-hole for not giving my husband a blowy joey? So, let me say right off the bat, me and my husband enjoy a healthy sex life, with the exception of blowjobs. I hate giving them, and as a result, I only give them on special occasions, his birthday or anniversary. Last night, he came home after what he proclaimed to be a rough day at work. Not even 5 minutes after walking in, he started begging me for one, saying how he needed it to feel better. I told him no, and then said we could have sex later if he wanted. He got all ticked and avoided me for the whole rest of the night. This morning before he left for work, I tried talking to him about what happened, but he burst out at me and yelled that, as his wife, I'm obligated to give him them whenever he wants. I was pretty shocked by this, and in the spur of the moment, I yelled at him that I don't owe him anything and that he has no right to my body. He stormed out and went to work. He texted me a few hours later that he would be staying with a friend for a few days and that I shouldn't expect him at home. I am really panicking now. I have no idea what to do. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give him one? Not the a-hole. You are 100% correct. He has no rights to your body and you have no obligation to be giving him any kind of sexual favors if you don't want to. And if this is his way of getting one from you, he sounds like a terrible person. Not the a-hole. Absolutely not. You are not a sexual servant. Withholding sex as a bargaining chip and simply not wanting to do a sexual act because it makes you uncomfortable are two different things. Side note, your husband's words make me shake with rage. Agreed, not the a-hole, and her husband is awful. What a horrible thing to say or think about another human being. He knew OP's preferences going into the marriage, so I find his behavior, overreaction, etc. baffling. Not the a-hole. I'm no expert, but something else might be going on. Yeah, there's more red flags here than in a bullfighting convention. Was he picking a fight on purpose so he could have an excuse to leave the house for a few days? Why would not getting a BJ warrant leaving the house? I'm considering giving him an ultimatum. Come home and discuss this issue, or we take steps to end the marriage. It's extreme, but I don't know what else to do. Whoa, the fact that the ending the marriage is on the table is super telling too. I don't know your relationship, but if you think it's worth saving, I'd sit down with a marriage therapist, stat. Yeah, you don't give ultimatums unless you're at your wit's end. Am I the a-hole for not giving my husband a blowjob? Update. First off, I really want to thank everyone who took the time to provide insightful and thoughtful opinions. My post had a lot of concerned people, so I just wanted to update anyone who cares. My husband came home on his own accord this morning. He was extremely apologetic and immediately sat me down and told me that he wanted to explain everything leading to his outburst. He said that at work, him and his friends had been discussing their sex lives and he had let slip that he was not receiving any blowjobs. He claims that his friends started insulting him for being weak-willed and not more stern with what he wanted. He says they encouraged him to confront me. Apparently, his friends put the idea in his head that without oral sex, his sex life wasn't legitimate. He told me that he really felt like he was missing out and that this is what led him to yelling at me. He called in sick from work so he could stay home with me all day. We talked about the future, and he agreed to go to marriage counseling or see a sex counselor together if that is what I wanted. I haven't completely forgiven him yet, but it's just nice to have him back home. I wasn't here for the OG post, but I feel like your husband has some serious crap wrong with him. How does he take some work colleagues' opinions when they don't even know your relationship well enough to judge it? Definitely don't forgive him yet. He deserves to learn what he did wrong. Frankly, the way he treated you is disgusting, and I'd be annoyed or angry with him for a good bit. Maybe counseling would be a good choice. The difference between her husband sharing private information and her sharing it is that she is sharing it as an anonymous person. No one knows OP. He shared his information with people she's probably met before and will meet again. And having intimate details about yourself revealed to people who'd rather not is a huge thing. I don't think it's weird for someone to listen to what a lot of their friends or colleagues are saying about their relationship. I don't think it's right, but I can understand it. Listening is one thing. I can understand that honestly. But to let it boil under their skin until they yell at their significant other is the thing I can't see most people doing. True, but if your self-esteem is low enough, you'll do anything to fit in. And that's a him issue, not a her issue. Marriage counseling would be good, but I'd argue him seeing a psychologist is more important. And yeah, I do think he needs help. I feel like this problem is way too far from being solved, and I don't have much hope for that marriage if he's able to break that easily to his friends. Imagine what other things he could be convinced to do just off of that alone. This man needs help. That's just my opinion. I don't know this marriage. This is just me taking it at face value. Don't read into it too much. Anyway, I'm going to throw you to outro Markee now. Alright guys, that's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to tell me what you thought about it down in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel, also don't forget to subscribe. It would really help out with my channel growth. And also, a huge shout out to my channel patrons and members. I just love you guys and thank you for supporting me on this journey. If you guys are new to the channel and you'd like to support me, links are down below for the Patreon, or you can click the join button next to subscribe if you'd like to become a channel member. Alright guys, that's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.